Welcome to episode 361 of the Postal Hub podcast. I'm Ian Kerr. Joining me in a moment is Andrius Ladauskas. He's the CEO of Venipak, the parcel delivery company based in the Baltics. We're going to talk about e-commerce, we're going to talk about delivery, we're going to talk about parcel lockers, and all things related to the last mile in the Baltics. So joining me in just a moment, Andrius Ladauskas, CEO of Venipak. Joining me on the line is Andrius Ladauskas. He's the CEO of Venipak in the Baltics. And Andrius, we're going to talk about parcel delivery, cross-border delivery, and parcel lockers. But before we get into that, for those who might not be familiar with Venipak, tell us a bit about the company, where you operate, the kind of parcels that you deliver, and things like that, please.
First of all, hello, Ian. Thank you for inviting me to your podcast. And of course, I'll introduce the company that I'm representing. It is called Venipak. Venipak is a privately held company operating in the Baltic countries. For those who do not know, it's Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, three separate countries. And we are situated in the northern Europe, nearby Finland, Poland, and Sweden across the Baltic Sea. What is special about us, as I mentioned, is first of all, we are privately held company, and the most of the competition is like state-owned postal companies. So therefore, we have a difference out there. What are we doing? So we are a parcel delivery company as well. We are delivering LTL cargo across the Baltics. So we have infrastructure in all countries. We have warehouses. At the moment, we put lots of effort expanding our locker network. And by the time we are talking, we have around 800 lockers around those three countries. And what is important to understand, we are one of the players that are operating across all the countries, because some of the players in our market are operating in one or another country. But we are the ones who are operating across all of them. And our USP is like a promise for the customer that it could get the parcel next day or in 48 hours.
Sounds like it's a very competitive environment that you're in. You just quickly, before we move on, you mentioned the about 800 parcel lockers. And a lot of people listening to this will want to know, are they your own dedicated parcel lockers, or are they operated in a partnership or something like that? How does that work?
Yes, we operate our private locker network. Previously, we had a partnership with the Lithuanian Post, and by the meantime, we expanded our own network, and currently we own them. And it's quite common in our area where we operate that all of the companies owns their own locker network. And as well, we have one or two players who are trying, to expand pure locker network, independent network, which is not related to the parcel delivery company.
Now, let's talk a bit about the different markets and the habits of the consumers in those different markets. Venipak has recently done some research into the shopping habits, or the online shopping habits of the residents of Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia. I mean, how would you compare them? I mean, are the shoppers all the same in every country, or are there differences between those three nations?
Yes, we are quite small. Just to understand, the population of the whole three countries is around 6 million, maybe a bit above. Yet there is three countries, and each has its own language, and of course, people are different as well. What we need to understand that, for example, Estonia is a bit ahead of Lithuania and Latvia in terms of how many people and how often shops online. And Latvia is the least concentrated in this part. That means they are always trying to reach the levels of Lithuania and Estonia. And we need to mention that we do not have like Amazon in the Baltic countries, but we have a local player who is similar to the Amazon and trying to do similar things as well, operating across all the countries and trying to reach all the customers and all those 6 million population out there.
And so when you compare those shoppers, then you've got sounds like a different level of maturity of e-commerce, would you say? And the absence of some of those global players in e-commerce seems to be driving that. I mean, do you see the locals also shopping cross-border then? Are they buying from the likes of Temu and Shein or AliExpress or whoever it might be? Are they using those platforms as well?
Yes, for sure. We are connected to Western Europe in some way. Talking in numbers, it's easier to understand. For example, Estonia has a penetration of e-commerce in the whole retail is around 17% compared to the Western Europe and those well-established markets. It's more than 20 and towards 30% of the retail is going through the online channel. So, and I'm telling that Estonia is the most advanced one. What relates, for example, Lithuania has a lower number, and Latvia is just more, around 10% or a bit more. So we have a huge opportunity out there to grow the market, and we feel that, and we would like to be like an accelerator for that doing our services. What relates to other foreign marketplaces or platforms like Temu, Shein, they're gaining the popularity and they're gaining it very fast. It's, I would say, it's a challenge for the whole infrastructure across the Baltics of all the players around, because those companies are coming in. They are not relying on one service provider. They usually work with few ones because one most probably won't be able to deal with all the flows that they would get from those players. And of course, we have those clothing well-known brands like About You and Zalando who entered the market like 4 or 5 years ago, and they are very popular out there, and they are working here as well. We have Amazon as well also entered silently, and we have a possibility to order from, I believe, German website and get quite fast and at some point even free deliveries to Lithuania. So talking about cross-border, yes, we see that it is a lots of momentum in that cross-border e-commerce in the Baltics, and all of the players gaining from that rather than losing.
Do you think that this is in part driven by the low prices that some of those online retailers are offering? Is that driving the popularity? Is that as simple as that, or is it also a convenience angle to it, do you think?
Price is an important factor. As always, I remember words of Jeff Bezos when he told that 3 things are the most important ones: it's price, assortment, and delivery time. So talking about Chinese platforms and their e-commerce flow, of course, price is important, but nevertheless, people used to get the things fast. I mean, 1-2 days max. They understand that it won't happen from the China flows. Nevertheless, they are looking very strict at what is promised during the purchase that they are making. And if the platform is not making on their promise, the platform is coming to their service providers and telling them that, look, we are not making on the promise and you need to keep up. So it's quite a strict rules that we are operating in with those huge giants.
Let's talk about the end of last year and the peak season. How peak season was for Venipak, what sort of volumes you saw and things like that. So let's start. What were the trends that you observed, not just for sort of Black Friday, Cyber Monday, but for peak season overall?
We have observed the high season as we expected. Maybe it started a bit later than usual, but we are at least making an assumption it's hugely connected with the Black Friday, which last year happened very late, like at the very end of November. So all of the flows just were concentrated during the December, and part of November was not It was intense, but yet not so intense as we expected. And December proved that the customers are there and they are buying and they want delivery on time.
So when you look at sort of the overall trends, you mentioned that it was very compressed. What sort of volumes were you looking at? What sort of volumes were you processing per day? Were you seeing record volumes? What can you observe there?
Definitely. As a company, I can't disclose the exact numbers at the moment, but looking from our perspective, December and especially those 2 peak weeks were the record ones in the company. And it is usually like that each December we are breaking the record, and this year was not an exception.
We mentioned parcel lockers at the beginning, so let's come back to parcel lockers. It's all nice to say, yes, we've built a network of 800 parcel lockers, but the customers still need to use them. Otherwise, you've got some very expensive street furniture, I suppose. So tell us a little bit about the delivery preferences across the Baltics. What do you see there? I mean, is there a genuine preference from consumers to select parcel lockers as their preferred delivery option?
I could rely basically on few surveys. One of them was done by ourselves. We made a survey across the Baltics and checked the consumers' preferences. And what I could tell that in each of the countries, basically more than 70% of respondents prefer locker as delivery type, and home is just in second place. And from my knowledge, what is happening in the Western Europe, we are quite a unique one of the area where people are preferring this type of delivery. And recently, our national regulator in Lithuania made a survey as well, and it proved the same numbers, that more than 70% of respondents would like to receive their parcel to the parcel locker instead of the going home delivery.
So it's almost a lockers first mentality, I suppose. Mm-hmm. So when people think about e-commerce, 70% of them are thinking about getting the delivery to the locker. And so is that sort of reflected then how your company approaches delivery? I suppose you're thinking lockers first as a strategy?
Definitely. When we are talking about the end consumer, locker is a preferred way of delivery, and we feel that, and we are going toward that direction. What is important to mention, why is it like that in the Baltics compared to other European countries per se? So some of the players in Lithuania made a bet, I would say, that they started investing in the lockers before the COVID. And the whole pandemic started in 2020. Some of the players in the Baltics already had a decent amount of lockers in their networks. And when the pandemic started, all of the people in the Baltic countries were strictly required to stay at home, and people actually did that. And they were afraid of meeting some strangers, the courier by their doors. Therefore, locker was like a perfect solution, that you could get the things, and people were buying a lot, as we know from the history. So our network was prepared for that. And by this, when the flows increased, e-commerce, and we know that it increased in 2020, 2021, it was like a golden age for the e-commerce. The infrastructure was there and people started to use it. And it was like a game changer. After the COVID, nobody wanted to come back to home delivery services, or at least, if possible, to prefer get their deliveries to the parcel locker.
Andrius, before we wrap up, one other thing we wanted to quickly talk about was in relation to e-commerce. We were talking about how it's still developing in certain parts of the Baltics. What are some of the other trends you've observed when it comes to e-commerce, things like how people pay and all of that? Have you got any other research or findings there that you can share with us?
Yes, of course, and we are cooperating with some local players, fintech players that are offering payment services, and Lithuania and the whole Baltics are quite advanced in this. And what we see the difference in the payments, it's like in the Baltics, more than 80% of the orders are paid in advance. And what is more interesting that it is paid not by cards, but we have like payment initiation service as such, and people are paying with their e-banking system at the moment of order and not so much using the cards. Of course, we see that the trends are changing, and it's hugely dependent on of the Apple Pay and Google Pay, as they made it much easier to pay with these services compared to entering card details during the order. So we are a bit unique, I would say, and what I'm hearing from other countries, card payments are the preferred ones. So we are a bit different in a sense. And of course, what relates to the payments, we see that most of the orders that we are receiving are paid in advance rather than paid at the pickup moment. Nevertheless, we need to provide this service because there are some players who are operating in this model. And for example, clothing brands, usually they offer the clients payment on the pickup and not in advance. So we need to have it. But what we see from the trends, people are used to pay in advance and used to pay from their online bank.
Do you see much activity with regard to the buy now, pay later model where you might pay by installments or things like that? It's very popular in some countries. Are you seeing much of that in the Baltics?
It's not so popular, honestly. I believe it's hugely related to the regulations that we have out here. And some of the players are trying to do some or another thing, but from my experience and what I'm hearing around, it hadn't gained such popularity compared to what, let's say, Klarna offered for the customers at some point and some other players. So we do not have such popularity at the moment.
Andrius, this has been a fascinating conversation. If people want to find out more about Venipak and the delivery services and the company itself, where should they go?
Easily, just venipak.com, and you will find us, what are we doing, and you will see all the contact details. Please contact and let's stay in touch.
Andrius Ladauskas, the CEO Baltics for Venipak, thank you very much for joining us on the Postal Hub podcast today.
Thank you.
Coming soon on the Postal Hub podcast, Mindaugas Sapickas from Copenhagen Economics. He's returning and he's going to talk about the USO in Norway and some changes that are afoot there. We'll also be talking about food delivery with Jennifer Morris from Ship Happens. Look out for those interviews and many more coming up on the Postal Hub podcast in 2025. What can you do? You can subscribe to the podcast. Subscribe in Apple Podcasts, in Spotify, in any of the other fine podcast platforms that are out there. Subscribe to the email newsletter. Go to thepostalhub.com and subscribe to the newsletter so that you get a notification every time there's a new episode. Or if you're really keen on the last mile, sign up for the Daily Delivery Digest. It's a daily email with all the headlines. Say all the important headlines. Let's put it that way. All the important headlines from the delivery world direct to your inbox, and it's free. So, why not? Very low risk, right? If you want to email me about anything at all, my email address is ian@thepostalhub.com. I'm Ian Kerr. Thanks for listening in, and I look forward to your company next time on the Postal Hub podcast.